everybody. I feel like I know a lot of people in this room, or we've met or we've crossed paths over the years. I'm MJ. I know Sitecore. So I know when people are getting ready to speak, there are some things that you can do to feel more confident and powerful. Some people do a power pose or a Superman pose. I like to do a reverse Mr. Rogers. I don't know if Mr. Rogers is a specifically American thing. I don't know if our global friends get the reference, but when Mr. Rogers came home from work, he would take off his dress shoes and he'd put on sneakers, and he would take off his blazer and put on a cardigan. I do the opposite. I wear red heels. So, and of course they don't want to go on, but that's all right, because I like being tall and it makes me feel confident and powerful. So here we are. Ooh, that was fun. I was kind of hoping that was champagne, but all right. So, my talk today is about, ooh, I got ahead of myself here a little bit. I was messing around. Jax, I think it is haunted a little bit, but we'll go with it. So, we're going to talk about optimizing for headless, SEO tips, tricks, and special considerations for the new composable world. So those of you who have been at maybe MVP Summit or Symposium, things like that, you may be triggered by the sight of a microphone in my hand. I promise you there will be no karaoke today. I mean, maybe later, there's lots of day left, but no singing in the next hour. To better introduce myself, my name's Megan Jensen. I've been in marketing for like 21 years. I'm really old. Working in Sitecore for about the last 7 years, mostly at Proficient. I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I am a 3-time Sitecore strategy MVP. Everybody else seems to be sharing fun facts, and it didn't occur to me that I should do that because there's not a lot of fun about me, but I've never had a cavity, I've never had a hangover, and my mother's cousin lived in Austria and was friends with the Von Trapp kids. So that's my claim to fame. That's all I got. So when I submitted my paper to speak a few months ago, I was a senior solutions architect at Proficient on the strategy side. And dun dun dun, since then I have gone to the dark side. I am going to go into sales. So I don't know if I need to change it to MJ Sells Sitecore or not, but it's kind of a new world for me. But I very much intend to try and keep up my strategy MVP and really stay involved in the strategy side of the world, because that's where my brain and my heart do my best work. So I want to start out with just a few questions to kind of figure out who is in the room. Raise your hand if you are a Sitecore employee. All right, so like a third-ish. Raise your hand if you are a consultant or freelancer, that sort of thing. You work with Sitecore. All right. Do we have any clients, prospects, in-house marketing folks? A few. Awesome. Very good. So I'm a marketer. This is the marketing track. So I'm going to speak to this audience as if you are all marketers, and as if the clients we work with most often are also marketers. So apologies to the devs in the room. This may or may not be interesting, but for the marketers, I hope that this is enlightening a little bit. So one of the first things I want to talk about, we're going to talk about the agenda quick. First of all, we're going to talk about simplifying headless and composable for marketers, SEO considerations for headless sites, making it work in XM Cloud and Content Hub DAM, and on the horizon, generative SEO. So if you are playing the AI drinking game this week, you're probably blackout drunk, but yes, we're going to talk a little bit about AI, so get your drinks ready. It's Friday afternoon. I don't judge. So, simplifying headless and composable for marketers. If you're in this room, you probably understand headless and composable. I understand headless and composable, but the question is, do our clients understand headless and composable? And the conversation is really different if it's developer to developer, marketer to marketer. As much as I love developers, it gets a little bit disastrous when developers try to explain it to marketers, because the things that are important to them, the language that they use, doesn't always make sense to marketing teams, and they can kind of glaze over, feel dumb, get frustrated, get overwhelmed, intimidated. So I've tried to really, really simplify this. One of my old bosses, when I started working in agency land, I asked him, what's the one thing I need to get good at in my job? And I was really surprised when he said, the one thing you need to get good at is making your clients feel smart. So I've really taken that to heart, and I try to explain technical concepts, terminology, site chorisms that might be new to them with respect, but as simple as possible. And I think about explaining this stuff to my mom. She just turned 70. She's brilliant. She was a sergeant at the jail for 35 years, which she is like the most Betty Crocker, Martha Stewart, wholesome grandma you've ever met, but she worked in a jail. But she's brilliant, and she will, out of the blue, quote statute and law and that sort of thing, because that's the thing she knows. So I know she's very, very smart. She just knows nothing about my world. So if there's something that I need to explain to a client, if I can make my mom understand it while treating her with dignity and respect and not talking down to her, I figure I've done a pretty good job. So first, this is how I explain to my mother, my husband, other marketing folks like this, the difference between traditional architecture and headless architecture. So here you have content. You have podcasts and videos and images and text and all the stuff that you want to put in front of your audience. We hand it over to one of our beloved developers. They build a nice Sitecore website, and ta-da, you have a website. There you go, traditional architecture. The metaphor I like is I like to cook a lot, so everything kind of comes back to food. I was also an English major, so I'm going to beat some metaphors to a bloody death today, so just bear with me. You have a big pile of ingredients. You give them to a pizza chef, and you get a pizza. The combination of things might be a little bit different, but it is what it is. You can't really take it apart. You have a pizza. Now let's apply this to headless architecture. Take that same content and take the same ingredients in your fridge and your pantry. Now you hand it to a developer or a chef. They can actually do a lot of things with those ingredients. So you can take those podcasts, videos, images, text, and you can make a website, but you can also use it for your email campaigns and social media and text campaigns, really any digital place where you have a conversation with your users. Now you can use that content in a bunch of different ways. And that, in a nutshell, in the very simplest term, is headless. Now, if you take that metaphor back to the kitchen and you have your fridge and your pantry full of ingredients and you hand them to a chef, they can be combined in a bunch of different ways to make a bunch of different things. You'll probably end up with a pizza. Could be pasta, could be salad, could be just about anything. So it's taking content and thinking of it more as ingredients, and you can make just about anything out of it. Now, I know there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into the background of all this, and I'm sure the developers would like me to go into detail about that, but I'm not. So, why headless? Why is this important? Making the case. Make it super duper simple to your marketing and business teams. Performance. These websites are faster than fast. You're going to have beautiful Lighthouse scores, Google Core Web Vitals. I took a screenshot from actual scores from our last XM Cloud project. Why does that matter for SEO? Google can look around your site a lot faster if you can, present those pages faster than a traditional website. Site builds can be more efficient because your back-end and front-end developers can work parallel to each other simultaneously, rather than the back-end developers building everything and then handing it all over to the front-end developers to do their work. So theoretically, you should be able to build a website a little bit faster than before. Headless websites are scalable. Not only in the site itself, you can very easily replicate websites and they can reproduce like little bunnies, or you can handle variable traffic loads a lot better. So you're just going to perform better no matter where your users are. And headless websites are generally more secure because the front end and back end are separated. If somebody's knocking on the front end of your website, they probably can't get to the back end, so you can be a little bit more confident in the security of your website. Now let's talk about Composable. This is a little bit easier to explain. And again, all right. Anybody want to go to this meeting? Would it be fun? So monolithic websites are like a Happy Meal. To a certain extent, you can choose a cheeseburger or chocolate milk or chicken nuggets, whatever, but you get what you get. It's these 4 things in a cute little box. You get a toy, end of discussion. Composable is more like ordering a la carte. I hope we don't order all this, but you could if you really wanted to. So if you want a McChicken and a filet of fish and a Diet Coke and 2 orders of fries and some cookies and a McFlurry, you could do that. One of the things that you need to be cognizant of is making sure it all makes sense to a certain extent. Make sure that you're not duplicating functionality, that sort of thing, and overbuying. It's easy to do if you're not paying attention. And then make sure it's all connected really well together. So making the case for Composable, it's efficient. You can buy what you need and keep what you like. A couple years ago, we built a headless website for a company, and they knew that they wanted CDP and personalize, but they had a CDP that they had been using a long time. It worked well for them. They were comfortable with it. All their data was in it. So we told them, great, let's use that. You don't need to buy the Sitecore CDP. Let's connect that with personalize. Well, because we were able to do that, they had money left in their budget to go with Content Hub, which in the end made a much bigger difference to their design and content teams and the performance of their website and just their general efficiency. So that's a really good example of, you know, you don't have to buy stuff you already have if it's working well for you and they connect well together. It's flexible. You can mix and match products that do exactly what you need. If Sitecore Send doesn't meet your needs and you'd rather go with, you know, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, something like that, it's fine. And it's scalable. You can add products as your needs evolve. Maybe you have a client that's going to XM Cloud, and that's a big enough change to start out with, and you teach them how to use the out-of-the-box personalization rules, that sort of thing. Maybe a year after, they think, you know what, we're ready for personalize. We have people who are interested in it. It's important to make sure that your clients have the bandwidth and the people. It is very haunted in this room. I'm totally into it. My husband is currently touring cemeteries in Dublin somewhere, so I feel like we're getting a little bit of that experience as well. Yeah. So you can add products as your needs evolve. Maybe you start with XM Cloud, use that personalization capabilities. A year later, you add personalize, and then you realize, you know what, we could really use CDP and, you know, add more juice to this. So then you do that. So you can evolve and add products as you need them. And it's agile. You're not tied to a single vendor. Everyone in this room would love our clients to have everything from top to bottom be Sitecore, but because we're good neighbors and we're good sports, that doesn't need to be the case. So if they want to use Optimizely for experimentation, if they want to use you know, Coveo for search, that's fine. We're good neighbors, we're good sports, we'll work with that just fine. And it's better for the client and their budget as well. So, like I said, there's a lot of terms that we sometimes overwhelm marketing teams with, and there's additional reading that we could do. You should probably be at least rudimentarily, is that a word? Have a rudimentary understanding of some of these terms, but don't overwhelm your clients with this. You know what marketers care about? What's going to be different for me and my team? Is it going to be harder or easier? What are we going to be able to do that we couldn't do before? How do we measure it? How do we know this was a good investment? So marketing teams and business folks, that's what they need to know. This stuff is good to know. They may have questions, but 99% of the time, they don't really care how it happens. They just want to know what's going to be different for them. All right, SEO considerations for headless sites. In all of my talks, I like to include one really inspirational quote. So, if you have ever launched a website, your worst nightmare is watching your organic traffic and watching your Google page rank do this. And you may cry and scream and pull out your hair because, you know what, somebody didn't do their due diligence. Maybe it was the dev team, maybe it was the marketing team, maybe you have an SEO that didn't follow best practices, but there is nothing scarier than launching your big, beautiful website and nobody can find it because it takes a long time and a lot of effort to claw your way back up to your previous page rank in Google. So I'm going to teach you a few things. The first soapbox I always get on when I talk about SEO is also accessibility. We should be designing for accessibility first, not just because of your users who have specific needs. Accessibility makes better websites for everybody. I'm 47. I have arthritis in this hand. I wear bifocals. I need things to be black on white, not gray on white. I need big letters and I need big buttons, and I'm only 47. So there's more users than you think that need your websites to be easy before they're sexy, I promise you. And if you're doing accessibility well, that's going to cover a lot of your SEO. And if you're doing SEO well, that's also going to cover a lot of your accessibility requirements. Some things where there's a really specific overlap, descriptive alt tags. Don't make your alt tag just what the file name is of the image. Make it descriptive. That's also how Google Images, Bing Images find that image for people searching for it. It's also better for screen readers. It's better all the way around. So put some time into being thoughtful when you're writing your alt tags. We talk about H tags a lot. From one perspective, it determines how a heading looks, how a subheading looks. I don't care about that. I care about how a screen reader is going to go through the site so that users with vision impairment, that sort of thing, can figure out pretty easily where they want to be on the page. It's also better for SEO to put time and thought into what the words are in your H tags. Make them high-value keywords. Don't put your H1 somewhere where it's going to change a lot. Don't put it in your hero banner if you're going to change that hero banner quarterly or personalize on it. Put your H tag somewhere where it's not going to change very often, and make sure you nest them just like an outline. When you were doing your 8th grade papers and you had to turn in an outline first, that's your H tag structure. Anchor text, that's another area where it's kind of easy to get lazy and call everything learn more, read more, click here. That doesn't say anything to people using screen readers. They need to know where they're going, and that's also better for Google. Make sure that you're thoughtful in your sitemaps. People with accessibility needs use it. Google also uses it to figure out what the lay of the land is with your website. Where is stuff? Where do I find things? How do I crawl your website a little bit faster? And then breadcrumbs. I always encourage our clients to use breadcrumbs. It's easier for just everyday people like me to figure out where I am and how do I get back to where I was. But it's also really convenient for Google. It can figure out where they are and where to find stuff, but also for your adaptability needs users. And then page titles as well. If you are a little ADD like me, I typically have like 5 Chrome windows, and each of those windows has about 200 tabs, and maybe 10 tabs are from the same website. Please do your title tags thoughtfully so that when I have 200 things open, I can go find the one I want. And it's also a really good accessibility requirement too. So we're going to get into a little bit more brass tacks. Semantic HTML. I didn't know what this was until I started researching for this, but I'm really glad I did the research. I stole this image directly from an article from SEMrush. I'm not going to pretend I made it, but it's a good example of how you can do kind of your front-end code to either just determine how a page is laid out on the left, or what the sections and what the different types of content actually mean. Is this a header? Is it an article? Is it a figure? Is it a footer? It makes it much easier for Google and your accessibility users to figure out the context of how a page is laid out. And it kind of goes hand in hand with its kicky little twin, schema markups. Ooh, these are my favorite. Schema markups is a markup that gives context to the information on a page. If you have a number on a page in an article, let's say it's 350, Google doesn't know if that 350 is the population of a town. Is it degrees? Is it miles per gallon? What does that 300 represent? So if you can go through and add schema markups thoughtfully, especially on product pages. If you have product specs, take the time to do this, because then what it does is when you show up in search results, you'll have rich snippets like this. So you don't just get the title tag and meta description anymore. Now I know that, this one has 4.9 stars out of 75, takes about 7 hours to make. That seems excessive for apple pie. I make a lot of apple pie. But you can see that this gives me good information, and now I can make a better decision about which website I want to click through to. I'm going to drink my water. My advice on schema markups, if you're going to do them for the MVP version of your site. If there is a unicorn in the world, it is schema markups. So if it's in the proverbial phase 2, it's probably never going to happen. Sorry, my throat is getting dry. So if you have any sort of e-commerce site, product pages, that sort of thing, budget and plan for doing schema markups right at the beginning, or it really will never happen. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about content modeling for SEO. The image on the right, I gratuitously stole a screenshot from Sebastian Winter's video on Content Hub 1 content modeling. So thank you, Sebastian. I don't know if he's here. But it's a good visualization of optimizing content based on, and kind of like Jax's talk earlier today, is this a heading? Is this a hero banner? Is it a recipe title? So it indicates like what the nature of that piece of content is and how it relates to other ones. So when you optimize a page, I want the title tag, meta description, H1, H2s, schema markups if we have them, alt tags, that sort of thing. Optimizing for content kind of takes a step backwards and optimizes the content before you even put it on the page. All right, this is a little complicated, but I'm going to do my best to explain kind of server-side versus client-side rendering. So if you have a static page that just doesn't change very often at all, and the Googlebot comes and does a little visit and kind of, figures out where things are, it's kind of like visiting your house. Like, oh, where's the restroom? Oh, there's the kids' room. Here's the den. Here's the living room. Here's the dining room. Great, I know where stuff is. So the next time I come back, I don't have to ask you again where the bathroom is. Googlebots like that. They like coming back and everything is where they left it. If you have a dynamic page with, let's say, search results or like dealer locators, that sort of thing, product recommendations, that Googlebot comes back and says, ooh, like the bathroom used to be here and now it's something else. And you move the living room to the, like, it's going to take me a while to get through this house. If they have to spend more time looking around to figure out where stuff is, you're just going to rank a little bit lower. So just be like mindful of, the difference between a static and dynamic page. Now, server-side rendering and client-side rendering. There's pros and cons to both of them. I'm not going to get too in the weeds, but I did some reading from Coveo about like search engine page results and that sort of thing, and this is particularly relevant for headless sites. You're going to typically want to use server-side rendering, but you can also do kind of hybrid pages. So if there's some static content, some dynamic content, you can kind of do both on one page and hopefully it won't affect your page rank too much. But Coveo has some really good articles on this. It's also worth noting, and this is according to Coveo, if you have like a hash or a question mark in your URL, Google will typically not index whatever's after that. So if you have a facet, McDonald's.com, hashtag salad, right, it's not going to care that it's salad. It's just going to care what page it's on. So it's worth doing a little bit more reading on this, but also being kind of careful and mindful as far as, how you decide to build those pages that may have search results, that sort of thing. So SEO considerations. These are some of the technical things that you should just kind of keep in mind. So if you have a bunch of products in your Composable DXP stack, make sure that your schema and metadata carry over accurately between products. You don't want conflicting metadata because stuff is coming from different places. So just make sure that everything is tagged consistently. Follow best practices for a crawler-friendly URL structure. Make sure that your backend and front end are consistent. Add validation rules to templates, and you can build in workflows and requirements to like require an alt tag, character length on meta descriptions, that sort of thing. Make it as dummy-proof as possible. When we're doing content documents, I try to kind of build these rules in them and say, okay, well, your title tag has to be X number of characters or pixels, whatever. But it's also really nice to have that directly in the tool so that content authors kind of get a flashing red light if they go over or forget to do something. Always mobile first. I'm just going to say that. Everybody knows it, but Google cares more about how a page loads and performs on a cell phone than a desktop. Another thing you might want to consider is setting up your site to dynamically update your XML sitemap whenever things are rearranged, when content is added, when content is changed or updated, so your marketing team doesn't have to remember to do that. You can set that up to do that automatically. And then if you were in Jax's talk earlier today and she was talking about modular content, where you may have an article in your CMS that you put in a bunch of different places, make sure that you're using canonical tags if you use it in more than one place, especially if it's long form content, because Google will definitely ding you if you forget to do that. And of course, when I say Google, that means every search engine. Google's just easier. And then a lot of the SEO plugins that we use for traditional sites like Yoast and that sort of thing don't really work on headless sites. So you're going to want to do audits a little bit more by hand, lean on SEMrush or Moz or whatever you have, but a lot of the plugins that like try to dummy proof it for you don't really work on headless. So it may take a little bit more work to make sure everything's up to snuff. The other soapbox I get on a lot is don't forget multilingual when you have global websites. It's not just translating the words on the page, it's making sure that the people in those locales who speak those languages can find your site. So I really encourage our clients to budget to do keyword research in every location they're going to do a website, and then organize those lists of high, medium, and low value keywords per country or culture. And then translate alt tags individually, manually, and use proper local nomenclature. I use the biscuit versus cookie analogy a lot. In the United States, I would write my alt tag, you know, woman eating a cookie and a cup of coffee. In Great Britain or, you know, Ireland, you would say biscuit, you know, chips and that sort of thing. So make sure you're using the words that your local users are going to be searching for. Very few people in England are going to be searching for cookie. It's an entirely different thing. And then when in doubt, translate and enter your meta tags manually. We would all like to believe that there's an automatic way to do all this, and there typically is, but at least spot check and make sure it's all translated well and you're using specific keywords to those locales. Double check your H1s to make sure they're relevant, and then make sure you submit your XML sitemaps to all the global search engines in addition to Google, Yahoo, Bing, all the local ones. All right, so making it work in XM Cloud. This is from the documentation for XM Cloud. I'm trying to not say I have gripes with Sitecore. I have a wish list for Sitecore. And one of my wish list things would be making SEO a little bit easier for marketing teams to manage. The beautiful thing about Sitecore is you can make it do anything. The hard thing is you have to make it do everything. So if, you know, you wanted to hire me to do an SEO overhaul of all your products and make it easier for marketing teams to manage this stuff, that would be great. So if you've been in XM Cloud, you know you can still get into Content Editor. There are some things that you can only do in Content Editor. I did find one discrepancy in the documentation. It says you have to adjust sitemap change frequency. In Content Editor, you can also do that in Explorer. Developers still need to configure your sitemap, enable and disable language codes and sitemap URLs, and configure robots.txt files. So this is something that I figured out the other day. I was chatting with Peter, as you do, you know, the day before a conference, and I'm like, it seems like there should be an easier way for marketers to manage at least title tags and meta descriptions in XM Cloud. I cannot figure out how you do it in Pages. I suppose you can do it in Content Editor. So he and I poked around a little bit, and yada, 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 it's in Explorer, the last place you would have looked, and it's not in any documentation anywhere. But I do want to just point something out to you. So if you go to Explorer and you go to, this is from our sandbox, so you go to the landing page, and I'm going to the MJ test landing page. It says the title. I was just kind of playing around to see if I could figure out, you know, where things land on the actual page. So I put, is this the title tag, in the title, you know, little field. And then I went to the actual website and it put that in the heading. I do not want it there. This is a piece of content that will probably change a lot. I do not want my title tag to be on the page, and I don't want it to change. I want it to be tied to that page until the end of time. The title tag is the thing that shows up at the top of your browser. This I would probably want to say, you know, MJ/proficient, something along those lines. So make sure you're kind of double checking to make sure this is not what happens. And then I open it in preview, and sure enough, is this the title tag, which it kind of looks like it should be an H1 there. It is in the tab above. So just like double check that, and you may have to change that manually because this is not what we want to happen. So make sure you don't ignore this as you're building pages. So making it work in Content Hub, damn, man alive. Our first Content Hub implementation, and it was going to be a global site. It was tough figuring out how to make alt tags work. Now you would think that because a DAM by definition uses these assets digitally, and you're going to need an alt tag every time you use it. There is not a default field on the asset detail page for alt tags. So again, my wish list, Sitecore clause, if you could add that, that would be great, because you have to go through all these steps. You have to go into like the manage page, add a schema, go to the pages interface, and then add that as a field. And it's even more of a nightmare when you have to start translating them and then using connect. It's a lot of work to make it happen, and you can figure it out, but it's not easy and it takes a lot of time. The other thing I want to point out with Content Hub is you can use renditions to automatically optimize image sizes correctly so that they're cached on the CDN to avoid size and performance issues. This is huge. If you have a client with 3,000 pages on their website and they have tens of thousands of images and assets and that sort of thing, the ability to just upload an asset once and create renditions and transformations as you use them can save just a tremendous amount of time. The client that I talked about earlier that bought Content Hub because they didn't need CDP were able to do that. And they reduced the time their designers spent on uploading assets by 80%. So that doesn't mean it went down to 80%, it went down to 20%. And holy smokes, that team was far more productive doing things that really mattered and created value because they weren't resizing images 5 times and uploading them 5 times. So if you have a client that's worried about the efficiency of their creative teams, this is a huge time and money saver. So everybody's favorite thing, AI and generative SEO. This is a really new thing. Do you guys remember a year and a half ago at Symposium in, I think, Chicago, everything was the metaverse, and we were going to have a little avatar that goes into the, you know, Harley Davidson shop and like pick out your Harley, and there's like a weird little Megan, you know, shopping for motorcycles. Here we are a year and a half later, and everything is AI and generative fill in the blank, and that goes the same for SEO. So what is this? I'm going to admit, when I was researching this talk, I used ChatGPT quite a bit. If not to answer questions, but like give me a little context, that sort of thing. And it kind of is starting to take the place of Google. So of course Google is going, oh no, we're going to get in on this action. So on the left, you'll see just kind of a generic question. What's the best takeaway in Dublin near Croke Park? If you were on WhatsApp last night, you knew that this was an actual question we were asking at about 10 o'clock at night. So here are some answers. Great. I know that this probably isn't super up to date because it probably, you know, is only accurate as of 2022, but it gave me some answers. If I go over to Google, what's the best takeaway in Dublin near Croke Park? The results are completely different. You know, you have some places, you have a map, that sort of thing. Google wants to be a little bit more like this and start dominating this market. So what they're doing is, and I want to start this little video, they've started something called Search Labs, and it's their search generative experience. So it's really intended to compete with ChatGPT, and it pulls data directly from crawled and indexed websites to provide answers directly on the search engine results page. and the results page looks different fundamentally. But instead of giving you a bunch of websites, it gives you a bunch of information instead. So, what does that mean? Why do we care? The upside is that lower ranking pages may be linked from these results, providing click-through rate and organic traffic to those sites. So this poor mom and pop takeaway place that's on the 5th page of Google, because they don't do SEO particularly well, maybe it's not a priority. If they're linked in that results page, they're going to get that traffic, and it's great. The downside is, if users find all the information they know on the search engine results page, they may not need to click through to anybody's website. So it could hurt your organic traffic a little bit. They're still getting the information. Hopefully they recognize that they're getting it from you or your client or their brand. But Rich Snippets also does this a little bit too. How many times have you asked a question on Google and somebody did the rich snippets and some bullets or a list? There you go, that's what I needed. I don't need to click through. So just be cognizant that that may affect your organic traffic and your click-through rate. And while your organization is still providing value, you don't get the traffic and your overall performance may appear to suffer. So a year and a half ago, we were talking about avatars in a virtual retail room, buying Harley Davidsons. Next year, I promise I will be back talking more about generative SEO, because this is just getting started. You can't even participate in the Style Labs thing, like there's a waiting list, so it's not like you can just go do this. I had to get this little video off just a demo page, but I really think that this is going to be a huge topic of conversation a year from now, and it's fundamentally going to change everything we know and do and measure around search engine optimization. So here's a couple statistics. Almost 87% of all search queries display search generative answers first. And then almost 94% of generative links came from sources outside of the top ranking organic domains. So that 94%, that's that mom and pop, chip shop on the fifth page. All of a sudden, if they were linked in that answer, they're getting that traffic. So yay for them, for us. So in my research, I've run across a couple of terms and concepts that I hadn't really heard of, and honestly, they seem a little overdramatic. YMYL means your money or your life. So if you have a page of content that is talking about red high heel shoes, it's fun, it's fluffy, it's interesting, it drives business, but if there's another page about how to save a life using CPR or the Heimlich maneuver, Google's going to just bump that to the top because it could save a life, that sort of thing. So this is, you want to write and produce quality content. Just be aware that the sense of urgency and the topic that you're writing about may float a little bit higher to the surface because of the nature of what you're talking about. Another acronym initialism is EEAT. It stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And I feel like that's all what we want in ourselves when we're behind a podium in front of a big group of people. But what it means is don't write garbage. Write good content with authority and confidence and that sort of thing, and you will rank higher. So what does generative SEO mean for us, for our clients, for kind of the universe? People are using more long-tail search queries. Just like on my ChatGPT question, I didn't say takeaway in Dublin. What is the best takeaway, near Croke Park? And people are tending to ask those types of questions now in Google. So those long tail queries are becoming more popular. Backlinks are really important. If you're not checking your backlinks like quarterly, you really, really, really need to, because if you have spammy, scammy websites linking into your website, you're kind of inheriting their bad reputation. And you can't not let them link into your page, but you can disavow them. And you're just telling Google and all the other search engines that, look, our neighbor is kind of garbage, and we know they're terrible, and they're loud, and, we don't like them. Please don't let that reflect on us. We can't move, and we can't make them move, but, we're not like them. And that's what that's telling Google. So pay attention to them. Another good reason to pay attention to your backlinks is they can be used by hackers to bounce traffic off of your URLs to very questionable websites. One of my first SEO projects, I was doing an audit for a very well-known company, and I happened to look at their backlinks, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of domains linking into their website. And I was like, well, that's really weird. So I went to one of the URLs, and I saw the most horrific porn I've ever seen in my life. So I very quickly backed right out, and I called my friend Tiffany in HR, and I said, oh my God, is there like a red alarm going off somewhere? I promise this was a mistake. And so I had to tell the client what was going on. We had to figure out why, what was the effect on their website. But I had to do a spreadsheet of all these URLs, and I made my friend Tiffany from HR sit right next to me and bear witness that I was not up to anything. I just had the horrific job of disavowing all these disgusting websites because they were bouncing traffic off of one of their URLs to get around a firewall. So make sure you pay attention, because you don't want one of your customers to like hover too long on a link and go, huh, that's weird, and then follow that link. So pay attention. Schema markups, again, very, very important. It produces rich snippets, a better experience for people searching for things. It may impact your click-through rate and organic traffic, still worth doing. As far as headers, it informs Google and users what the page information can be optimized for keywords along with long-tail search queries. So be mindful of those H1 tags and your title tags as well. And then produce quality content to improve your YLYM EEAT scores. Produce content that's important, that's not scammy and spammy, that's not, speculative. Produce good content, and you shall be rewarded by the Google gods. So, what's the big takeaway? This is complicated. It's evolving. We're going to know things a year from now that will contradict the things I just told you, and I'm going to apologize in advance for that. But everything is new right now, and we're all learning. So absolutely do the basics. Follow best practices. Do the things that you know you have to do, but also hedge your bets. Do all the things. Make sure that you are meticulous in checking your SEO on every kind of website, but it doesn't hurt to do all the things a little bit better than you have in the past, because what's the worst that could happen? Your page rank and your organic traffic dip after launch will be a little shallower and a little shorter than it would have been. So do all the things. Make sure you have time and budget and a dedicated person who knows what they're doing on your team to get this done. Now, I'll be honest, this talk was 10% experience and 90% research. So I want to give credit to all these great websites that I read a lot about. But also Sebastian Winter, if he's here. If not, he produced a great YouTube video that helped a lot. But my colleagues at Proficient, Tiffany Laster, Eric Sanner, Martin Miles, and David Sanfilippo really, really helped in reviewing and correcting me and telling me what I was wrong and the things that I forgot. So I really want to give them credit for the help that they gave me in this. And then, of course, thank you to our sponsors. Stuff like this doesn't happen without them.